The movie opens with Jackson and two other divers searching the open sea for a legendary Spanish treasure that supposedly vanished centuries ago. According to the stories, the gold was buried deep beneath the ocean floor, somewhere near a mysterious underwater sinkhole called the Blue Hole. But for Jackson, this wasn't just about money. He owed a ruthless loan shark named Tariq, and if he failed to recover the treasure, he was going to pay for it with his life. After reaching the exact location, Jackson plants explosives underwater and swims back to a safer distance. Right before detonating the charge, he notices something shining beneath the sand. It's an old Spanish gold coin. Seconds later, the explosives go off. A massive crater erupts beneath the ocean floor, shaking the water around them, but the blast uncovers something much worse than treasure. From the darkness below, a gigantic prehistoric creature suddenly emerges. Before the divers can even react, the monster rushes toward them with terrifying speed and swallows both of Jackson's partners almost instantly. Panic takes over as the creature turns its attention toward the boat pilot above the surface. The man opens fire, unloading bullets into the beast, but nothing happens. And within moments, the pilot disappears beneath the water too. Meanwhile, on a nearby island, a marine biologist named Sarah captures a strange sea creature for research inside her laboratory. Around the same time, a tourist couple, Rod and Jane, arrive on the island hoping for a fun adventure vacation. There, they meet Henry, a local boat operator. Henry tells the couple that he can take them scuba diving near the Blue Hole. About an hour later, they finally arrive at the location and begin preparing for the dive. Only minutes after entering the water, Rod and Jane suddenly spot something horrifying drifting beneath the surface. It's a human body. With Henry's assistance, Rod manages to pull the unconscious man onto the boat, and that man turns out to be Jackson. Somehow he survived the attack from the massive sea dinosaur earlier. Jackson was left stranded alone in the ocean for hours. By pure luck, someone finally found him before it was too late. The commander quickly checks for signs of breathing and realizes Jackson is still alive. He immediately says they need to get him to a hospital as fast as possible, but Jackson desperately begs them not to take him to a hospital. If the police start asking questions, all of his illegal activities could come to light. Rod secretly notices the old gold coin hidden inside his sleeve. Curious, he steals it and takes it back to his hotel room. Elsewhere on the island, Tariq is growing impatient. His men were supposed to return with the treasure hours ago. Suspicious, he sends two armed thugs, Raul and Ralph, to investigate what happened. Back at the hotel, Jackson finally regains consciousness, but he's still deeply shaken by whatever he saw underwater. Sarah soon arrives after Henry contacts her for help. As they question Jackson about the coin, painful memories suddenly hit him. He remembers Tariq's men brutally beating him while demanding repayment for his debts. Desperate to survive, Jackson came up with the treasure hunting plan as his only way out. The Spanish gold hidden near the Blue Hole was supposed to save him. Now, with no other option left, he tells everyone the entire story. After hearing everything, Henry and Rod decide they have to go back to the Blue Hole and search for the treasure themselves. But Sarah isn't interested in gold anymore. She wants answers about the creature. Whatever attacked them underwater clearly wasn't normal, and her scientific curiosity pushes her to join the expedition too. Eventually, Jane decides to stay behind on the island, while the others prepare to head back out to sea. But somebody else is already watching them. As Jackson boards a new boat, Ralph spots him from a distance and immediately informs Tariq about his location. Tariq wastes no time giving the order: kill Jackson. The two gunmen head into open water to intercept them, but before they can get close, the ocean suddenly erupts beneath their boat. Out of nowhere, the massive sea monster bursts upward and tears straight through the vessel in seconds. A short while later, Henry's group arrives at the wreckage. One look at the destruction tells them exactly what happened. Soon after, the Coast Guard arrives and reveals that two separate boats have already been destroyed that same day. Naturally, they suspect Jackson's group is somehow connected to the incidents. Sarah begs them to allow the expedition to continue toward the Blue Hole, but the Coast Guard refuses. Hours pass, and Tariq still hasn't heard back from any of his men. That's when he decides to handle things personally. Back on the island, Jane relaxes alone on the beach, listening to music, when a group of young guys invite her to join a nearby boat party. At the same time, Henry's team prepares for another dive into the Blue Hole, but at the very last second, Rod loses his nerve and refuses to go underwater. So only Jackson, Henry, and Sarah descend into the depths. Deep below the surface, they finally discover the remains of the ancient Spanish shipwreck. Near the wreckage, Sarah notices a enormous footprints pressed into the ocean floor, along with several strange eggs hidden nearby. Jackson picks one of the eggs up, so Sarah can examine it back at the lab. Then, suddenly, Sarah notices a human hand drifting through the water nearby. Without wasting another second, the group rushes back to the surface. Once they return to the island, Jackson accompanies Sarah to her lab, while Henry and Rod head off to find Jane. Inside the laboratory, Sarah scans the egg using an X-ray machine. What she sees leaves her completely stunned. Inside the shell is a dinosaur embryo, not some unknown fish, not a mutation. An actual dinosaur. Carefully, the two crack the egg open, and Sarah uses forceps to remove the tiny creature. But the second it comes out, the baby dinosaur starts violently struggling. Sarah quickly asks Jackson to grab a sedative, but just as she tries injecting it, the creature suddenly breaks free and lunges toward Jackson. Thankfully, Sarah manages to grab it in time and locks it inside a freezer before it can escape again. At the same time, Rod checks his phone and finally notices Jane's message telling him she's attending a boat party nearby. And the second he reads it, his face drops. Because out in the ocean, Poseidon Rex is already moving toward that exact boat. The ocean suddenly starts churning violently around the party boat. Then Jane loses her footing and falls straight into the water. One of the guys instantly jumps in after her. The creature rises from below and drags the man under. From far away, Rod watches everything unfold through binoculars. The second he realizes Jane was on that boat, he and Henry race toward the scene as fast as possible. By the time they arrive, Jane floating injured in the ocean. He pulls her onto the boat, hoping she's still alive. But he's too late. Things are getting even worse back at Sarah's lab. Out of nowhere, Tariq and his armed men storm inside. They threaten Sarah's life and demand the Spanish gold from Jackson. Cornered with nowhere to run, Jackson quickly lies and tells them the treasure is hidden inside the lab freezer. One of Tariq's men walks over and opens it. Big mistake. The baby dinosaur instantly leaps out and attacks him, throwing the entire room into chaos. Using the distraction, Sarah and Jackson escape the lab and trap the remaining gunmen inside before running for their lives. The two eventually reunite with Henry and Rod on the boat, where they learn about Jane's death. Now, everyone finally understands the truth. This nightmare will only get worse if more dinosaur eggs hatch. So, the group makes a dangerous decision. They have to return to the blue hole and destroy every egg before more creatures are born. This time, the Coast Guard agrees to help. Using sonar equipment, Sarah detects something huge moving rapidly beneath the water. Moments later, the guards open fire into the ocean. For a brief second, Poseidon Rex rises above the surface. Then the monster suddenly disappears underwater again. Without warning, it explodes upward beside Henry's boat and attacks before anyone can react. Jackson immediately grabs a harpoon launcher and fires directly into the monster's chest. Wounded and furious, Poseidon Rex dives deep into the ocean again. But there's a problem. The harpoon line is still attached to the boat. Suddenly, the entire vessel gets dragged violently across the sea as the monster pulls it deeper into the water. Everyone starts losing control, and for a second, it looks like they're all finished. At the very last moment, Jackson cuts the rope. Later, the Coast Guard returns the survivors back to the island. Most of the civilians have already fled in panic after hearing about the attacks. Not long after, the Coast Guard heads back toward the blue hole, but Poseidon Rex is already waiting for them. The monster wipes out the entire team before turning toward the island itself. People start running in every direction trying to escape. Amid the chaos, Sarah suddenly remembers an abandoned military base located on the far side of the island. The three survivors begin making their way there. But along the road, Jackson spots an abandoned car. He tells Sarah and Rod to run toward it while he distracts the monster himself. As Sarah and Rod reach the vehicle, they discover the driver dead nearby. Frantically, they begin searching for the keys. Sarah finally finds them. But before they can leave, someone unexpected appears. Tariq. Somehow, he survived the attack from the baby dinosaur earlier, but this time, he's standing face to face with the mother. Poseidon Rex suddenly bursts forward and takes him out instantly before he even has time to react. Using the distraction, the group speeds away from the area. During their escape, they stop at Tariq's hideout and collect as many weapons as possible. But before long, Poseidon Rex starts chasing them again. The group unloads bullets into the creature non-stop. For a moment, it actually collapses, but then it gets back up and this time, it slams directly into the vehicle. With no other choice, the three flee into the jungle while the monster crashes through the forest behind them. Somehow, by hiding within the thick bushes, they manage to avoid detection and survive. Hours later, they finally reach the abandoned military base. Jackson searches the facility and tries contacting the military through an ancient radio system, but nobody responds. That's when he reveals something important. Inside the garage, he found an old aircraft that might still work. Jackson tells Sarah and Rod that if help doesn't arrive by morning, he'll use the plane himself and try killing the creature alone. And far away from the island, someone finally hears the signal. The military tracks the transmission coming from the abandoned base. Then satellite images reveal something unbelievable moving across the island. A gigantic dinosaur. The army staff can hardly believe what they're seeing, and they immediately mobilize toward the island. The next morning, Sarah uses an old telegraph machine to send Morse code messages to the military. Finally, a response comes through. In just 20 minutes, the entire island is going to be bombed. Hearing this, Jackson immediately decides to put his plan into action. The aircraft only has 2 seats, meaning all 3 of them can't escape together. So, Jackson tells Sarah and Rod to flee by boat, while he uses the plane to lure Poseidon Rex away from them. As the aircraft takes off, the monster instantly notices it and begins chasing after Jackson. Meanwhile, Sarah and Rod race across the water, trying to escape before the bombing begins. But suddenly, Poseidon Rex dives into the ocean and changes direction toward their boat instead. Then, the first bomb drops. The explosion badly injures the creature's neck, but somehow, Poseidon Rex is still alive. Sarah suddenly stops the boat. She grabs the bazooka Rod had earlier, steadies herself, and takes aim directly at the charging monster. One shot. A massive explosion tears through Poseidon Rex, finally ending the nightmare once and for all. After everything is over, Sarah returns to the island and reunites with Jackson, and together, the two set off on a new journey to hunt down every last remaining egg before another Poseidon Rex can ever rise again. Sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't the ones hidden in legends. They're the ones waiting silently beneath the surface for someone foolish enough to wake them up.